questioning is perhaps the greatest gift we have as human beings.
Science is more than a body of knowledge. It's a way of thinking.
It's a way of thinking that teaches us to question everything we think we know.
Science came about by developing techniques, methodologies for gaining reliable knowledge about the world.
We have at our fingertips the technologies that were only possible for the largest governments and corporations 20 years ago as an individual today.
If human civilization continued at anything remotely like the current pace of technology advancement for 1 million years, where would we be? I think we're either extinct or on a lot of planets.
The good thing about science is that it's true whether or not you believe in it.
We hold the scientific method in high regard because it works. If it stopped working, we'd throw it out.
Discover the past.
Create the future.
This is the Here and How podcast.
Welcome to the Here and How podcast, where every week we dive deep into big ideas, exploring the past so we can create a brighter future. This is episode 24, Are You A Psychopath? My name is Rachel Oates, and with me are the wonderful Thomas Westbrook. If you want to say hi, you can do.
Hello.
And Stephen Woodford.
Where you said, do you want to say hi, you can do. I'm like, well, no, if I don't have to, I'm not saying hello. But yeah, no, hello, everybody.
Sounds like something a psychopath would say, Steve.
It does. Let's find out what happens during this episode.
So, how much do you guys know about psychopaths?
I watched Dexter.
Okay.
Is he a psychopath or a sociopath? I always get the two confused.
Well, I'm going to ask you that later. You know, ruining my episode there. That's a little question I have for you.
Well, I don't really feel, bad about that.
Sensing a pattern here. So before we start, I thought we'd do something a little bit silly and fun. And you know how psychopaths tend to be kind of like sensationalized in the media, and you get them in a lot of like films and TV and books and stuff like that, because, I read a lot of crime thrillers, and, there's always the whole like, oh, he's a psychopath serial killer trope. Well, while I was researching this, I found loads of like really silly, like newspaper and blog article titles with psychopath in them. So I've got 3 for you here, and you have to guess which one is fake. All right? Mm-hmm. The first one is, selfie-obsessed men may be narcissistic psychopaths. The second one is, 10 signs you're definitely in love with a psychopath. And the third one is, if someone is friends with their exes, it could be a warning sign they're a psychopath.
Wow, they all sound like actual internet articles, but I'm going to say the third one.
Steve?
I'll go with the first one. Let's just go for it.
Okay, well, Thomas was right first time. They're actually all real.
Yep. Wow.
What? I tried to do a tricksy on you, and you figured me out.
You did it. Nothing on the internet surprises me anymore.
I know, right? There's just so many articles out there that are just like, if this person does this, they're a psychopath. Are you dating a psychopath? Were your parents psychopaths? And there's like so much around it, and so much is just kind of sensationalized by the media. Like, there was a whole thing about how Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are both psychopaths, but one is a little bit more of a psychopath than the other. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I can kind of believe it, but also you're just kind of starting to throw psychopath around a little bit freely now. I
was going to say, actually, something that I do know about psychopaths is that, I don't know why I want to say psychopath, but instead of path. I don't know if that's just wrong, but it might be. Isn't that just a British pronunciation? I want to say it is, but I in the past have been using my own Isle of Wight lingo, and it's just been wrong, so I'm not entirely sure.
Oh, that's all right. I do that all the time as well, and people are always like, you can't speak! And I'm like, I know, I'm from Yorkshire.
You can give them the Matt Dillahunty statement of words are tools, they're not authority. If you understand what I'm saying, that's what matters. I don't know. I think I kind of like your pronunciation of coyotes. That was horrible. Yeah, exactly. But I'm keeping it because, consistency and the consistency heuristic. I'll keep it. But no.
You stand by your coyotes.
Yes, exactly. What I read was that a lot of CEOs are psychopaths because it melds well with that kind of lack of emotive reaction to certain things, because you can make hard decisions without being basically constricted by sympathetic cares for others. So it doesn't surprise me that politicians would probably fit that very well, because some of the decisions they make, they're often stuck between a rock and a hard place. Like they either negatively impact lots of people or they negatively impact lots of other people, and it comes down to who can give them the most money, and then they won't affect them. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
You are spot on there, and we're going to do a whole bit at the end where we talk about like psychopaths having careers and what careers they're most prolific in. But before we get to that bit, do you guys know what the difference is between psychopath and sociopath? Because they're often used interchangeably, but they are different. Do you have any ideas what the difference is? If you don't, that's okay.
Sounds like Thomas did from earlier.
I used to. I'm trying to remember, but I think it's like a psychopath tends to like be more violent or something, or like it's like one. I don't know.
I know.
That's okay.
I know I'm mistaken here, but in my mind, I see it as almost a sociopath is a high-performing psychopath, in the sense that all the bells are there, all the same things are happening, but they don't act upon it. Whereas a psychopath
Which way round did you say? Oh, okay. Sociopath is a high-performing.
Essentially, I know that's wrong, by the way, but that's essentially how I view it.
Isn't that the Dexter trope?
Is it?
Or something like that.
So I'll get to Dexter in a second. I don't quite know how to say you're wrong, but you're wrong.
No, I'm fine with that.
Sorry. So basically, I'll start from the beginning, give you an overview. When a doctor diagnoses you, there isn't really exactly an official diagnosis as psychopath or sociopath from most doctors. They tend to just diagnose you as having antisocial personality disorder. And psychopath and sociopath both come under that, and you can be one or the other, but they're kind of variations of that. So they're similar, but they are different. So one theory is, before we get into the differences, is that psychopaths are born that way, and it's like a physiological thing, and it's something that's wrong with their brains, whereas sociopaths are created or made, and usually it's because of maybe like some kind of abuse or traumatic event in their childhood. Not always, but that is kind of like a big trend. So, to give you a little definition of psychopath from a scientist called Bob Hare, who did a hell of a lot of work in the sort of late 80s, early 90s, and even up until now, he wrote that psychopaths are social predators who charm, manipulate, and ruthlessly plough their way through life, completely lacking in conscience and feelings for others. They selfishly take what they want and do as they please, violating social norms, expectations without the slightest sense of guilt or regret. So we'll get onto like a complete list of like what makes a psychopath in a minute, but to give you some comparisons, basically both psychopaths and sociopaths have a disregard for laws and social norms. Both of them have a disregard for the rights of others. Both of them fail to feel remorse or guilt or shame, and both of them can, but not always, have a tendency to display violent behaviour. The difference is, psychopaths tend to be more calm, a lot more cold, and a lot more manipulative, where sociopaths are more impulsive and erratic, so they can't control their emotions in the same way that psychopaths can. Similarly, psychopaths have a hard time forming real emotional connections and relationships with other people. They might have lots of friends or even a family, but they don't have those deep emotional connections there, because the relationships they do have tend to be more about what they can get out of others, how they can manipulate others to gain themselves. Whereas sociopaths do have difficulties forming relationships sometimes, but they can form emotional attachments to people who might be like family, or, you know, if they're in the same group. So psychopaths can't form emotional connections but can have lots of friends. Sociopaths find it hard to make lots of friends but can have the emotional connections. Does this make sense?
That kind of makes sense, because like if a sociopath has gone through the trauma that led to them, like they didn't start off that way. It wasn't just that like their brain was a little bit different, but if they went through a lot of trauma, then they're dealing with like this constant PTSD and this constant past baggage that's, you know, the skeletons in their closet, not stuff that they've done, but stuff that's been done to them. And so if I can only imagine how difficult it would be, and I in a large sense empathize with people who are in that type of situation, because like it is difficult to cope with things like that. And so if their sense of empathy is damaged as a result of it, then yeah, it would be really hard to function in society. But if you're just born with the inability to experience emotion, you can still learn how to react. You can still read what people's emotions are and kind of figure out what they're feeling, even if you don't have kind of a similar correlate to relate to.
Yeah. So the final kind of difference I want to just get across is that psychopaths are often seen by the public as being quite charming people. They know how to put on this front. They're seen as quite trustworthy and friendly. They're often really well educated. Whereas sociopaths, they tend to be more kind of agitated and anxious. They anger more easily. They're very quick to react. And so they find it hard to kind of stay in stable jobs or in education or anything like that, which is why you'll often find psychopaths in the really high-paying jobs, whereas sociopaths tend to be more consistently employed, unemployed, because they can't kind of, they find it hard to stick with long-term plans like that.
So would it be fair to say that and this may be kind of putting you on the spot, but a psychopath who is far into the spectrum is deals with the inability to experience emotions the same way that we do, and then you have someone who's maybe has borderline personality disorder and everything is just emotional and everything is they take stuff personally and they're kind of like the emotional equivalent of a third-degree burn patient where just everything they feel. Would it be fair to say that those are kind of two opposite ends of the same spectrum, or would you say that BPD is completely I'm just completely off my rocker there?
I don't really know enough about BPD. Is that different from being a sociopath?
Yeah,
because it's not something I really came across while I was researching this, so it's not something I know a whole lot about.
So it's basically where you take everything personally. So it derives, it's not something that you're born with most of the time.
Yeah.
Although I think that there can be a genetic component, but usually people who have BPD have a past history of abandonment or abuse at the hands of a parent, usually a mother. And so if you have kind of this history of just always feeling like you're not good enough and you have to prove yourself, then everything you're looking for signs to and you're feeling things so strongly and emotionally that usually most people would just let kind of bounce off their thick skin.
Are you just describing me here?
No, there's a difference between being emotional and having, it's like every little thing is like sandpaper on your skin.
Yeah, I get what you mean. I think, there's a chance they're kind of opposite ends of the same spectrum, but I wouldn't know for sure. But it's something we can discuss more in a minute when we talk about kind of what's going on in the brain of psychopaths, because that might give us a little bit more of an idea. Yeah, that's okay.
I'd definitely be really interested to hear the genetic component if there is one. That's really interesting.
It's quite interesting. It basically comes down to two big differences in the brain, and like I say, we'll get there in a minute.
Sure.
Fun little thing though, I was going to give you two fictional characters, and you have to guess which is a psychopath and which is a sociopath.
Both.
No.
Neither.
So if I say Dexter from Dexter and the Joker from Batman and just DC Comics, which one's a psychopath and which one's a sociopath?
I've never watched Dexter, so you'll probably be better.
I want to say in Dexter he calls himself a sociopath, but I don't think that that's right. The Joker seems far more like a sociopath, and Dexter seems a lot more like a psychopath because he's extremely calculated, high functioning. But it did come about through trauma in his past with his mother being murdered in front of him. So I don't know.
We don't know. Maybe it was a genetic thing with Dexter. There was trauma in his past, because that's the thing. Psychopaths can kind of get worse from trauma in their childhood, but there is still the genetic thing there, and he acts more like a psychopath, so I would say psychopath rather than sociopath. And the Joker would be your typical sociopath. He's sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, would I be right about the Joker in saying that it depends on what form of the Joker we're looking at, because the comic one, he seems very sociopathic in the sense that he doesn't stay committed to certain things and makes mistakes. Whereas if you look at the most recent ones with was it Dark Knight Rises? He was more
The Dark Knight.
Yeah, he was very, very consistent, very, very intelligent, and the consistency would make me think more psychopathic. Would that be right?
That's true,
Well,
actually,
but
yeah.
he's still going completely off the deep end, and like wants to make the world burn, and is just doing impulsive things that
he's just convinced by the wrong ideology. It's like it makes me think, if you take some serious figures like Hitler and Stalin, Mao, because they did atrocious things, would we automatically say that they're psychopaths? Because it could just be that their ideology's wrong, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to their motivations, and that's why, well, that's part of the reason why it's so difficult to diagnose a sociopath, because a psychopath, because only they can know their motivations, and if they're motivated by wanting to manipulate people, wanting to gain something for themselves, wanting to control others, then yeah, they're probably a psychopath. But if they genuinely think that they're helping people and doing the right thing, and it just so happens that they hurt people along the way, then yeah, no, there's pretty much no chance they're a psychopath if they genuinely want to help people.
Well, and here's the thing: if someone does take a psychopath test, but they don't want to be diagnosed as a psychopath, then they'll just alter their responses. Like,
that's one of the big things we're gonna come to in a minute. Because I'm actually gonna make all of us take a little basic version of the psychopath test, which should be quite fun. But before then, I want to talk a little bit about the brief history of studying psychopathy?
Psychopathy. Yeah,
psychopathy. Yeah, that's a weird word to say.
Roll with it.
So, when do you think the term psychopath was first used? If you had to guess.
I would guess near Phineas Gage when they started with neuroscience.
Oh, what year was that now?
Let me find out for you.
1920?
Phineas Gage. What a legend, that man. He's like, he sponsors our podcast, I think.
Oh, pretty much. He's come up in at least 4 episodes now.
Yeah, he was born in 1823 and he died in 1860.
Okay.
Now a quick word from our sponsor. This episode was brought to you by the Phineas Gage Foundation. It's off the rails.
Find us on audible.com. No. Off the rails. That's horribly great. I must say, Thomas, for someone that doesn't like puns, you knock them out the park.
My coffee is spiked.
Oh.
I take back what I just said.
His eye.
Guys.
Rachel, please continue.
That's okay. These are definitely the jokes of a psychopath.
We've gotten off track.
Oh. You guys.
No, so... Thomas.
I admit to nothing. I'm gonna place the blame on Steve like a psychopath.
You guys. So back to psychopath. No, wait, we were still on psychopaths. Back to my episode, you boys. So the word psychopath was first used in the early 1900s. So kind of quite a bit after Gage. Yeah. But the idea of kind of studying these antisocial people and figures kind of started in the early 1800s. So it was going on for 100 years before they even introduced the word psychopath. And basically, it was used to describe a hell of a lot of different people who, in their words, showed either moral depravity or moral insanity. They seemed to possess no sense of ethics or the rights of other people. But this also included things like alcoholics and gay people. So it was a little bit out there.
Yeah.
In the 1930s, they changed from using the word psychopath to sociopath for all of these people because they wanted to emphasize that they do a lot of damage to society. But this later changed back to psychopath. And then later they switched to having kind of 2 separate terms. So I'm going to kind of throw a lot of dates and information at you here, but bear with me for the next 5 minutes, right? 1941 was the first time we got a kind of checklist of like features of a psychopath, if that makes sense. And it was created by a guy called Cleckley, whose name I quite like. And he came up with this list of 21 features that you could use to diagnose a psychopath, but apparently it got a lot of criticism because it included unusual and questionable items. Take that as you will.
Mm-hmm.
1952, we got the first volume of a very, very important book or collection of texts called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or DSM, which is still being made and used today. We're on volume 5 at the minute, but they've since switched to kind of updating as in terms of like having 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, and so on. So we're getting kind of like small little, what's the word? Like updates now to it.
Patches. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
6 beta release.
Yeah. So that is the first one, like the first in a big line of textbooks in 1952. And
so can we opt into the beta version and see if we like our mental diagnosis before we
and if you don't like it, you go back to volume 3.
Just revert back to
yeah.
You can't.
The dev screwed this one up.
Yeah, so like I say, this was like the first kind of collection of, any kind of attempt at universally diagnosing mental disorders, and it included what they called sociopathic personality disturbance, with one particular version being called antisocial reaction, which is kind of what we think of today as psychopathy, right? Mm-hmm. It was super vague again, and as I mentioned before, it included things like homosexuality and being an alcoholic and stuff like that, and said that, if you're an alcoholic, it was basically the same as being a psychopath because you were ruining society or something like that, and it was a disorder you had to change.
Mm.
The biggest change happened in 1980 when the third volume of it was released, and that was where we got a huge shift because they finally started not just saying, oh, you're a psychopath if you're doing this bad thing and this bad thing and this. It stopped doing that and got a lot more specific in its criteria. It stopped just being really vague and started being like, okay, now we have to do like proper diagnosis based on proper studies that have been done. So they used a woman called Dr. Robbins, who created like a big sort of diagnostic list. And she came up with 9 criteria to decide if you're a psychopath or not, with very specific requirements. So, for example, she said it would be something like you had a poor work history, you had irresponsible parents, you did unlawful behavior, you had problems with relationships or infidelity, and it got very specific. So it wasn't just you have relationship problems. It was like, okay, you've gone through 2 or more divorces, you're married to a wife with severe behavioral problems, or you've had over 10 sexual partners in a year. And apparently if you checked off like so many things on this list, then you were diagnosed as a psychopath.
Nowadays they just call that a celebrity.
Yeah. So as you can see, there was still some problems with it, but we're kind of getting a big step forward towards getting something that's a little more useful, right?
Mm.
The same year, Bob Hare developed the psychopathy checklist, which is also known as the PCL, and a revised version of this, the PCLR, or, psychopathy checklist revised, is what we still use today it's one of the tools we still use today to diagnose psychopaths. So it was a 22-item list, and it included features like superficial charm and lack of remorse. So we're getting somewhere that's a little bit more kind of to what we understand as a psychopath today at this point. So one of the big criticisms, because at the time, like I say, there was the DSM Volume 3 and the psychopathy checklist that were out there, and they were 2 quite contradictory ways of diagnosing a psychopath. One of the big criticisms was that the PCL assessed personality traits, whereas the DSM Volume 3 assessed behaviours. So my question to you guys is, when diagnosing a psychopath, what do you think is more important? To look at their personality traits or their past behaviours? or a mix of both. There's no right or wrong.
Well, one would be an indication of the other, wouldn't it?
That's what I think, yeah.
Although I I say that, but like, so if you're diagnosing a psychopath, they could choose if they're highly intelligent, they're wanting to blend in and stuff, like they could choose to behave in a way that mirrors society, whereas their personality traits might be different.
Yeah.
So I would say probably traits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is tough because the traits are a little bit more subjective, whereas the past behaviors, it's an objective thing that they can't exactly get round because, people have seen it done. So, like, they can't deny that they've had 3 divorces in the past 5 years if the records are there. Whereas, like, it's a little bit more subjective to say, oh, I think you have commitment issues to someone,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but what if someone has, they haven't been in any relationships and they've, they're a 17-year-old kid or something, and maybe they haven't really done anything that would be abnormal for, someone going through puberty, going through a weird, crazy stage in their life, but they still have kind of a neurological difference.
Well, that's the thing. That's why a lot of the times psychopaths aren't diagnosed until people are over 18. Kind of between 15 and 18 is said to be like the earliest when you can really diagnose it. And there are potentially signs in children, but you can't really know for sure until they're older.
Well, I think part of that is that like every single kid is like a crazy like
mess until they learn they're just like, everything's mine.
Yeah, it's like they're the most selfish little brats. Like,
it's interesting to wonder whether or not there's brain changes, like visible, seeable, objective brain changes during certain ages. Because you're right, kids are fundamentally psychopathic to some extent, in the sense that it's my world, it's my toys, we do what I want, and it's something to do with growing up that changes that.
Yeah.
There are certain like things in kids that have been studied like that. For example, they don't have a sense of self until like a certain age, and so that affects their behavior, and you can see that in how their brain develops and grows and how it responds to certain things. There have been tests done on like babies and toddlers to see how they respond to things like race and recognizing strangers and family and so on, to see how it affects their brain, and they respond in very different ways to adults and even to like kids going through puberty.
How do they respond to race? I don't suppose you know.
I don't know the specifics off the top of my head, but there was like a thing done where they had like dolls, and they would put the dolls in front of the kids and then like ask them their responses, but also there was some where they like studied their brain responses as well to see like if they kind of recognized a doll as being the same race as them, and if they had like positive or negative reactions to it. I don't know off the top of my head what the conclusions were.
No, fair enough. I'll look it up after the podcast. It's really interesting because I know that adults, even the most non-racist ones, they have negative reactions.
Biases.
Yeah. I've noticed it myself, for example. Like I will see someone darker skin, and I can notice my subconscious reacting in a way that appalls me. But most people aren't in touch enough with their subconscious to admit that, let alone admit it on a podcast.
It's an evolutionary thing, though. We were kind of essentially programmed, if you want to call it that, to recognize people as being different from us and be like, they're not part of my group. Maybe it's danger. And so it just alerts you for a second. Yeah. And the whole part of us being like aware of this stuff is so that we know consciously that we can override that and say, oh, wait, okay, my brain is saying they're not part of my group, but I, on a rational level, know that they are, so they're safe,
I think initially, there is kind of that, is this person different from me and my family and stuff? But, like, I think also, like, we do kind of tend to learn, like, what differences matter and what differences don't. So, like, if you're in a society where, like, people with curly hair are treated different from people with straight hair, that's what you're going to be noticing. Like, even if, like, there's skin color differences, like you're going to be more, drawn to what is society talking about? What is society looking down on? What is society treating differently? That's why you had in Rwanda, you had the Tutsis and the Hutu that were really completely identical racially, It was just a matter of they had been divided by class. And so they would find tiny little differences. Like they were, one tended to be a little bit taller, had tended to have slightly different sized noses or something. Like, they'd find these differences where, otherwise most people wouldn't even be able to distinguish. Like if I put up a picture of two side by side, you probably wouldn't even be able to tell that there's any kind of a difference. But like people are, they're drawn to the differences that society exacerbates and emphasizes. And I think that kids pick up on that really quickly.
Yeah, definitely.
No, fair enough.
Yeah. All right, back to psychopaths. You guys hijacking me again.
Always.
So, like I say, there are two kind of main tests used today to test for and diagnose psychopaths. And they are the PPI, which is a psychopathic personality inventory, which was developed by two scientists called, I hope I pronounce this, Lilienfeld and Andrews in 1996. And then Bob Hare's psychopathy checklist, which he initially developed in 1991. Oh, sorry, no, he developed that earlier, didn't he? 1980. Then put out a revised one in 1991. And then he's done some little updates to it since. So there was one in like 2003. And, it's kind of updated a little bit all the time. But this is the one that I kind of want to focus on today because it's quite an interesting one and it's a fun one that we can do. So basically how it's like diagnosed by medical professionals is that they sit down and they do this kind of semi-structured interview with their, we'll call them patient or subject. And, it's kind of like quite a casual conversation, but they do have certain prompts and questions that they're looking to answer. And there are 20 items on the checklist. And you can get a score of 0 to 2 on each of them. So at the end of it, you come out with a score of either 0 or 40 or somewhere in between. And depending on where you are, different medical professionals have a different score. So in the US, I think it's something like if you score over 25, you're diagnosed as a psychopath. And if you score over 30 in the UK, you're diagnosed as a psychopath. So...
Damn.
So what you're telling me is we're about to find out that we're psychopaths.
But doesn't that mean if we look at America has more psychopaths than the UK? It's like, well,
I know.
Look at the methodology and you'll find out that's not the case.
That's one of the things we're going to talk about in a second when I give you some stats. But it's a very, very important thing, that there are kind of like different standards. And also, like, this isn't an infallible test. It's not perfect. A lot of it is very subjective. A lot of the time, the person doing the interview has to kind of think a lot about like the motivations of the person and the context of what they're talking about and so on. So it's not perfect, but So how do you want to do this? Do you want to guess some of the things on the list, or shall I just ask you them and we'll score ourselves and then
let's
tot it
score
up at the
ourselves.
End? Yeah,
score it.
All right.
Do it. Here we go. Can we have like a music? We love music as like a dun 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 dun. Let's go.
Oh, what about the one from Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
Yeah.
It's
exactly.
Or the Jeopardy.
But like this is for £100. A, B, C, or D. Yeah.
I'll take. How do you feel about leaving someone stranded to die alone for 500, Alex?
Yeah.
So some of these are about kind of like your personality and where you'd rate yourself on a scale from 0 to 2. So 0 is not at all. 2 is, that's completely me. 1 is, that's me some of the times. Some of the questions are about your behavior and your past actions and things you've done, but they're all very vague. So don't feel like you have to shout out your score if you don't want.
Okay.
Right, but at the end, I will be asking you for your totals, so... If you want to grab a pen and paper, you can do. Because, it's going to be lots of 1s and 2s here.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so on a scale of 0 to 2, how would you rate your glibness and superficial charm? Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Okay, so like superficial charm is like how charming can you be to other people? How much do you make people like you, even if you don't mean it? So like, do you constantly compliment people even though you think they're really ugly?
No, never 0.
It?
Yeah, no, I actually have a philosophy of making sure when I say something I mean it, because I carry.
I'm the same, actually.
It's quite strange. Like I have like family members and friends, and if I speak up, I've noticed they listen more. And the reason being is that like Steve's expressing an opinion, he normally doesn't, despite the fact what I do with YouTube. Therefore, he's probably got something that's not just his opinion. There's something else to it. Yeah. And I don't
see. I think there's a middle ground though, because like there's times where you feel like garbage, but you kind of like put on a face and you go out and you're like, well, I've got to be around people, especially if you're like, I worked in retail for a while, and it's like, that your future pay and raises and stuff and recommendations to your manager is directly linked to putting on a smile, even if you feel like garbage. So like, I don't think that I have superficial charm, but I think that maybe I have official charm.
Yeah.
If that's a thing.
Yeah, that is an important distinction, I gotta say, yeah.
So I'd say 1 for me.
Okay.
Did you say 1 means a middle ground?
Yeah.
And 0 is nope.
Like never.
Yeah.
Like not at all.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
0 for me. What about you, Rachel?
It is a tough one because, like, on the one hand, I don't think I do it, but like Thomas says, like working in retail and stuff, it's almost like I trained myself to kind of put on this happy front for people sometimes. So I definitely feel like it's something that does sometimes slip through, even though I try not to. So I'm going for a 1.
As you say about the happiness, I think this might be the distinction. Putting if I'm down, which is not so often anymore, but there was times when I was a teenager and I was very down, I would put on a face because I felt like the other people didn't deserve to be dragged down with me, so I would be happier, or I'd have that superficial appearance of being happier. Whereas I know people that act a certain way, such as happiness, and like they're your friend, because they have in their mind goals that they want to achieve or things that they want to do. I've never done that, but I have done the former, and maybe that's what you guys were basically referring to yourselves, in the sense that it's more considerate, and rather than you want to do it, or there's reason for you to do it outside of just being nice to others.
Yeah, that's true. I think I'm going to try and be a little bit more like harsh with myself though, just to get the kind of most honest thing that I can. All right.
So by being honest, though, you've just proven that you're not a psychopath, right?
Maybe I was tricking you.
So,
all right, number 2.
Yeah.
Okay. The second one is a grandiose sense of self-worth. So you think you're really good. You build yourself up constantly. You think you're better than everyone else, but like to a really big scale. You're basically a god compared to all these little ants around you.
What if you know you're better than everyone else?
Steve's like 2.
Number 2.
To be honest with you, I think I'm a 1 on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have humility in the sense that I very much know when I'm out of my depth, and I know where I'm wrong, and I frequently admit I'm wrong because I am wrong. But I will say that I do think that I'm better than most people. So maybe that makes me. But I think that for good reason. I can give evidence for it, but maybe that is just a horrible thing to say.
I would have to go with a 1 as well, because like on the one hand, I mean I'm in the Bible Belt in Texas, and I'm surrounded by a lot of like stupidity, but at the same time, like I've been there, and I know that the only difference is kind of an eagerness to learn and to grow and have a growth mindset and have the grit to go out and learn more. So like I know that like everyone has the potential to become more intelligent, and that like there's been times in my life when I knew a lot less than I do, and like even now there's a lot of people that know more than me. So it's like I'm kind of in between, because on the one hand it's like there's this frustration with like stupid people, and like, oh well, I'm like so much smarter than they are, that I think I tend to fall prone to at times. But at the same time, like there's a certain acknowledgement that like I'm not inherently smarter or inherently better than anyone else. But
yeah.
And if I was in their shoes, I'd probably, end up exactly the same way, Yeah.
Well, I'm going for a 0 because I'm a mess. Okay, the next one is, are you a pathological liar?
I'd go with the 0.
Yeah, 0.
Yeah, same.
Just don't lie.
I'm big on honesty, yeah. And
I will white lie, but yeah.
Yeah, it's not really the same.
Steve,
like,
does this dress look fat on me?
Yes.
I'm wearing a t-shirt. Joke's on you.
Exactly.
Liar.
You say this, I'm going to Photoshop a dress over you when I edit this episode.
Oh, God.
Beautiful.
All right, number 4 is how cunning and manipulative do you think you are?
So I'm going to use my manipulative skills to ask, like, when you Photoshop the dress on me, can you do like one of those like sexy models instead of like, you know, making me, you know, hideous looking?
I'm going to be cunning and manipulative and say, yeah, of course I will. I'm not going to.
I want to be a sexy girl if I'm going to be a girl.
I see the manipulative question to be very similar to one of the ones we've already had, in the sense of it's the superficial charm of being able to charm people to do what you want to do.
A lot of them are very similar, but still different.
What's the wording on that one again?
Just how cunning or manipulative do you think you and your behaviors are?
2.
Really? You're joking, aren't you?
No, I'm completely serious. Because really? I approach everything from a position almost of like, what is the end result that I want, and what is the most tactful way to approach it. So I don't think that that's a psychopathic thing. I think that that's it. It's somewhat Machiavellian.
Really? Because that is like the epitome of being a psychopath.
So, yeah, say it one more time. If you can say it one more time.
Oh, like how cunning and manipulative do you think you are and your behaviors are?
See, what I would say is that I have the potential to be 2 or even a 3 if there were such a thing. But I don't do it to people. I don't do it to animals. I do it to inanimate objects. So I'm like Thomas in the sense that I have a goal in mind, and I think very rationally and procedurally about how I can get to my goal. I don't think I have maybe a handful of examples of where I've deliberately manipulated people or animals to do what I want in order to reach my goals. But if I asked them, do they have the same goal? Would they like this? And if they say yes, I say, well, this is what we should do.
Well, so I don't see manipulation as like, I see that there's positive and negative manipulation. Like you can manipulate positive or negative outcomes. And so if you're having a conversation with someone and they're, you know, going off the deep end and they're having an emotional breakdown, and, you know, you can either approach them in a way that is like, you know, say 2 identical things to them and one pushes them even further and one pulls them back from the ledge, then it's like, yeah, you want to be tactful in your approach. You're manipulating the situation, you're manipulating the outcome, and you're manipulating the person's reaction to what you say based off of your demeanor and your thoughts and your words and your actions. But you're doing it for good. So you could call it social engineering or human hacking, but you could call it ethical human hacking. Like you're using your knowledge of people's reactions and people's psychological states to end up with a better result than if you just kind of flew by the seat of your pants. And that's how I approach everything in life. Like that's how, because I do marketing is like a massive part of what I do for a living is I make the videos, but I have to market them, or I have an idea and I can either, put out an idea in such a way that resonates with people or in such a way that falls flat. And I can say 2 identical things, but I want to do it in such a way that manipulates the response that I want. It's,
The problem I see there, and it's not a problem, it's just why I see that word differently, is that it's the same as just being clever. It's like you're just being resourceful and clever about getting to your goal, and you're calling that manipulation. And so you're saying, yes, I'm manipulative. Whereas I reckon the people that do these tests and the books themselves will probably very much spell out what they mean by manipulation. Yeah. And if it is what you're saying, and it totally could be, then I am manipulative. Whereas because I'm having to assume that manipulative means the way in which I've described previously, I would put myself as a 0. If that makes sense.
I think this one's kind of like a tough one for me because, like, as a person, I don't see myself as manipulative. Like, I'd never manipulate my family or friends or anyone I cared about to do something for me. But at the same time, I do feel you have to be a little bit manipulative to want to go into a career like marketing, like I did, because so much of it is learning how to play people's emotions and how to get them to hand over their money, as horrible as that sounds. So that's why I want to give myself a 1, because part of me is like, well, it's not a personal thing, but the fact that I'm able to emotionally detach myself from it to manipulate thousands of people kind of says something to me.
Here's something that you've touched upon there, which makes me really justify myself as a 0. I quit advertising because I did not like that. I quit marketing because I did not like that, because I was getting in trouble with the CEOs because they were sending me briefs across for designing websites, for designing things. And I was going up to them with a lovely design. It was awesome, if I may say so myself. But I would tweak things where I would make it so that the wording is not so vague. Like they know what they're buying into. Or I would tweak it so that I'm putting in the center where I know the eye tends to go first rather than in a corner. Or I would make sure the colors contrast so that this bit of information is more seeable. And they would always tell me, don't do that. So they know what they're doing. They know how this works. Whereas my conscious and me as a person was like, this isn't right. And it's ultimately why I left.
Well, it wasn't so... Sorry. Do you want to go ahead?
I see it kind of 2 different ways, because on the one hand, like, I do a lot of marketing, but I'm very careful with, like, I'll only sell something that I believe in. So, like, I turn down sponsors who offer me money because I think that the product is garbage and because I care about my integrity and I don't want to manipulate someone to their detriment. But at the same time, I do, like, if I believe in my product and I do believe in, my videos and this podcast and all this stuff, like, then I'm going to sell it and I'm going to try to do stuff that works. And I'm going to try to manipulate the market, and I'm going to try to do things that are a little bit clickbaity, put titles and thumbnails and stuff that kind of pull people in. And, I don't...
It's kind of the same for me. Like, when I was working in marketing, I was able to detach myself from it because I knew that people weren't really getting hurt. I was working for the student room who helps students. I was working for a book retailer who sell books. Whereas if it was someone like a little bit dodgy, who was like, I don't know, doing like weird scams, or I don't know, just, I don't know, like, say I was trying to sell dodgy vitamins to people instead of like cancer treatments. I would have had the skill to do that marketing wise, but I don't think I would have felt good about it. So I don't think I would have done it, which is why I'm not going for the 2.
Okay, I'll go for a 1 because like if I'm like, let's say that I'm around kids and I tell a kid, like, it's past their bedtime and they need to go to bed or something, like, I might be a little bit manipulative and being like, hey, like, if you go to bed right now, like, there's an adventure tomorrow and you got to get your sleep and stuff. And it's like, well, you're kind of, getting the outcome that you want, but it's for the kid's best interest. Like, it's so that they get a full night's sleep and so they grow healthy and are not going to get sick or something. But I'm not going to manipulate a kid into giving me their lollipop or their candy, so it's like I'm when I'm in sales, I'm not going to do it to someone's detriment. Like I'm going to do it for their best interest. Not
to open a can of worms, but you touched upon clickbait, and I just want to say that I think clickbait's fine if you deliver. If you oversell it, it's fine, but it's as long as you deliver. What's wrong is when there's not a delivery. That's where it's wrong.
Yeah.
Just the random boobs in the thumbnail.
Yeah.
Oh, I know you two do that all the time, don't you?
I did it with the argument from Beauty Debunked, and I brought into context those boobs, so don't you worry.
Yeah, no, I
sure
put,
you did. Is that what you told your girlfriend?
She doesn't watch my videos, so we're good.
Oh.
I had one video where I put Kim Kardashian's butt in the thumbnail, and it didn't actually get really a whole lot more views. So.
Well, sometimes mine just slip in there, and then people are like, "You're a disgusting clickbaiting whore." And I'm like,
"Oh, that said, if I had boobs, not like man boobs, like if I had like chick boobs, then like I probably would have a little bit of cleavage showing."
Yeah,
just
I always get people being like, "Oh, it's disgusting. You're thirsty for views again, and that's why you're wearing a tank top." I'm like, "Oh, it could be because it's summer. Have you thought of that?"
Also,
and people are like, "Nope, doesn't make sense."
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe I'm just shameless, but I'm like, if you know, if I look gorgeous, then
relevant.
like, you know, why not like put my gorgeousness out into the world?
That's
Oh,
actually
you always do,
question.
Thomas.
That's actually the 5th question. So you're a 2 for that.
Oh. All right, no, in all seriousness.
Wait, was that number 4?
No, that was number 4.
Oh, that was 3.
Okay, number 5 is you have a lack of remorse or guilt.
No.
If there's 20
I'm a
questions,
0
we
for
probably
this.
got to kind of hurry because I've got like 30 minutes left where I have this
That's
room
fine,
booked.
yeah. Let's speed
So-
these up. Don't feel
Okay.
you have to explain everyone.
No.
Which one is
It's
this?
interesting. Number 5 is lack of remorse or guilt. I'm
Martin,
a 0 for this because I'm like permanently guilty about everything.
yeah, I lose sleep. Like, I tremendously lose sleep. My conscience weighs very, very heavy on me.
I once accidentally stole a £3 Lego action figure from Asda because it didn't scan on the till and I thought it did, and I cried about it so much that I made Dan go down and pay for it when he came home from work.
Okay, you're a -1.
I have remorse and guilt, and there's things that like I feel bad about, but like I try to do everything I can to live a life free of like where I'm not doing things that I'll feel remorseful about. And then if I do something, I apologize and I get it off my chest. So like I don't really like right now there's nothing that I feel remorseful or guilty about.
I think that's fair. I think that's normal.
All right, so 0, 0.
Yeah.
And what you, Thomas?
I'd say 0.
Cool.
Okay, that's good. All right, the next one is called shallow affect. So it's like when you feel a genuine emotion, it's only ever short-lived, and it's very egocentric. So it's like you might feel happy for yourself because you got a job, but let's say your sister gets a new job, you don't really care that much. And when you are happy about something for yourself, it's like gone 10 minutes later, you're like, oh, okay then. You know, you don't get these kind of like long, prolonged kind of feelings of joy or sadness or whatever. They're just like there and then they're gone and they're only ever about yourself. Again, I'm definitely a 0 because I'm an over-emotional wreck.
I'm going to say 1 because I'm like, I don't tend to be the most emotional person. And like, I feel happiness and I feel other people's happiness and I empathize and I feel other people's pain, but I don't dwell on it. Like I'm stoic as fuck. So I'm very, I think that the best way to put it is like, I'm extremely selective with the fucks that I give, but I do have like, you know, fucks to give.
I'm stoic as fuck. Come on, that's amazing. Wow. I put myself down as a 0.
Okay. The next one is you lack empathy. So 2 if you lack it, 0 if you don't. Again, I'm a 0 because everything makes me cry. I'm like permanently worried about other people.
I empathize when it's justified. Like if there's a great injustice, like right now what's going on with the Catholic Church with all the people who are being raped and molested by the church, like I'll see something like that happen and it's like a huge injustice and I'll hear like one of the stories of one of them and I just like I tear up. So like I very much like feel and am empathetic. But at the same time I like if someone just comes to me and starts complaining and it's like something that they can do something about or it's their own damn fault, I have 0 empathy. I'm like, well, what are you going to do about it? How are you going to fix it? How are you going to solve it? Like fix your shit. Like
That's a fair point. I'm switching what I had. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I had it down to 0 because I'm very empathetic.
Oh, I'm still putting 0 because I call that actual empathy. Like
okay. Well, it's a good point. It's
Yeah.
two people that have problems, and they don't fix them, and there are solutions, but they almost just enjoy the drama. I have 0 fucking time for. Like they waste my time. I don't like it. I've had enough of that done. So no empathy whatsoever. Whereas talking of the topic of psychopaths, I feel bad for them. I feel bad for paedophiles because to be sexually attracted in that way is horrific. So the paedophiles that don't act on it,
and it's worth
to
saying
me,
you feel bad for paedophiles, but you don't feel bad for child molesters. They're different things.
Yes, yeah, that's absolutely worth emphasizing. Thank you.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, it's like I feel bad for the people that they just attracted to children. They don't act on it. They know it's wrong, etc. But they don't get a choice in that. If that makes sense. I feel very bad for that. Whereas a lot of people, no empathy whatsoever for such people.
Well, and you know, there was the case I think we talked about in a previous episode where like the guy got a brain tumor that started pushing on a certain region of his brain and caused him to be attracted to kids where otherwise he never was before, and stuff like that's freaking horrific. Like, you know, I mean, I can't imagine. Yeah, like there's times when like I'll get like really strong urges to eat pizza or like really strong urges to like, you know, do, you know, completely legal stuff, but like, you know, sometimes you know,
we all know what you're thinking, Thomas.
That's, you know, just like people putting their poo in me. I'm never gonna live
it these days.
I'm never gonna live that episode down, am I?
Especially if you keep bringing it up.
But no, so like I can't imagine what it would be like to have urges to do things that are extremely self-destructive. So like a heroin addict who just, you know, has these urges. It's like, that sucks. Like I can, you know, you've gone through life where, you know, you didn't have, you know, parents that were around or positive role models or something, and you had someone that gave you drugs for free, and that, you know, you're a kid and you're easily influenced, like all this stuff leading up to it. I'm like, yeah, that really sucks. And if I was in the exact same situation and had all the exact same factors, I would be in the same shoes. So like I definitely have the ability to empathize with even, you know, the craziest criminals, but like at the same time, like there's some stuff that is just like not cool. Like it's unacceptable. And there's a reason that we have deterrence and that we have laws in place, because like it's sick and it needs to be dealt with.
Yeah. All right. Try and speed up these next few, if that's okay.
Do it.
Sorry. Failure to accept responsibility for your own actions. I'm going for a 1 because like I always try and own up to, you know, my own messes, but obviously there are some times when I'm kind of like scared to, so I don't always want to take responsibility until I'm kind of forced to.
I'm going to go 0.
Yeah?
Yeah, 0.
Yeah.
All right. Number 9 is need for constant stimulation and a proneness to boredom. This is a 2 for me. I need constant stuff to be doing.
I'm 2.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I think I might be 2, but then...
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like today my phone has had problems where I can't connect to the internet, and it turns out they rejected my card. I've got to redo that so that I can use it. And I was sat there on a boat with a lovely view of the sea between Portsmouth and the Isle of Wight. And I was thinking to myself, I'm bored shitless. And then I thought, that's a problem. So 2.
Yeah.
All right, next is... Oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah, I mean, I love, like... I don't get bored that easily, just because like I always find things that are fascinating and that are interesting. And I always am trying to find, you know, cool stuff. But I think it's just that like I know where to look, because I used to get bored all the time, and then I started finding interesting things everywhere. But I have to be constantly stimulated. Like I'll literally have like a podcast on double speed while I'm like doing sit-ups and brushing my teeth.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah, me too. All right, the next is you have a parasitic lifestyle, which means you're kind of constantly benefiting from others. Like, you maybe don't want to work yourself, so you leech off your parents or your partner or your friends or whatever.
Well, we're all YouTubers, so, you know, we leech.
Yeah,
exactly.
No,
0.
I'm going for a 0 for me. I've always earned my own money and done my own stuff, so...
Yeah, I've been living on my own since I was 17, so I'd go 0.
18 for me, so same.
13 for me.
13.
Although I guess my parents did help with my tuition. So does that make me a millennial and a 2?
No, that's silly. All right, poor behavioral control. I'm gonna go for a 1 because sometimes I can be a little bit impulsive, but most of the time.
I'm going to get here before Thomas. I'm going to go for a 0 because I'm stoic as fuck.
You too.
See, I would... I can't do 0. I'm not that Buddhist. I'm gonna go with the 1.
Okay. 12 is lack of realistic long-term goals.
Oh, 0. Wait, what do we mean by realistic? Because like I want to become like the
Miss
emperor
World.
of Earth and space and everything.
Yeah, you're a 2.
Man, I would vote for you immediately.
Yay!
I'm gonna go for.
I'd have 1 vote.
1.
So, sorry, I'm a little confused. 0 means that you have those plans, or 2 means you have those plans?
0 means you have them.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
Wait,
Yeah,
so 2 is 2 lack of goals, or like your goals are just way too huge and aspirational that they're unrealistic?
And then who gets to decide that?
It can be either.
Mm.
Oh.
Well, I should.
And that's the thing. That's why it's normally like done by like a professional, and there are like specific criteria and stuff. So we're just in the basic version.
Yeah.
Because first I was gonna say 0 because like I'm extremely ambitious and I always have big goals. But then I was like, wait, but some of my goals are like so gigantic they might be like unrealistic, but they're not unrealistic to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. That's an important point that you emphasize on. It's who thinks that. I'm sure you guys have had naysayers. So when I said that I wanted to become a YouTuber, etc., they said that goal was too grand. No one makes it. Stop it. And I was like, no, that's my goal. I want to do that. And so
it's
does
only unrealistic in retrospect.
Yeah.
Because you look at people who are like the greatest, boxers in the world, the greatest, people who become presidents and stuff, and they have failure after failure and naysayer after naysayer, and they just drown it out. Now, it might be a little unrealistic if you're like 3'2". I don't know if you can even be that short, but like if you're like 3'2" and you expect to like beat Usain Bolt in a foot race, But I mean, then you might go out and you might build some like prosthetic limb that makes you like run super fast.
I remember hearing Carl Pilkington having a go at paraplegics, saying, "Listen, if you don't have legs, don't become a swimmer. Pack it in." Come on, calm down. It's like you're not going to win. Stop it.
I'll just go with 0.
Yeah. Okay, 0.
All right. 13 is where it gets like a little bit tricky because it just says like, how impulsive are you? Psychopaths aren't very impulsive. They're very manipulative. So in this one, the more impulsive you are, the lower the score.
I'm probably a 2 then. I'm not very impulsive. Like
You're not.
Again, it is the stoic philosophy in the sense that I'm very careful. I get very embarrassed if I'm wrong or if I do someone harm, and it hurts me. Really does hurt me. So I'm very procedural with what I do. So 2, I'd be right up there.
I'm less impulsive than I used to be, but I still have crazy impulses. Like I still have the impulse to tell a quadriplegic joke right now.
Can I just say, like, people like Sam Harris on that question, in my estimate, would be like a 5.
So what do you call a quadriplegic out in the ocean?
Drowning.
Oh God.
Bob.
Oh.
we lost our one quadriplegic listener.
Yeah, currently at sea.
We're never gonna get sponsors, are we?
The joke's on them. They can't turn us off.
They're gonna blow that straw. What psychopathic behaviour?
I just scored 20 out of 20 on the psychopath test, just with that one off-color joke.
That was good. They are still thinking, I wish I could turn this off.
What are they going to do? Like, kick me in the shins?
Oh. Nice.
All right. So wait, I guess I'm 1 on that one.
Okay. Next question is, how irresponsible are you? I'm going to
0.
go for a 1. Because I can be a little bit sometimes. Most of the time I'm not. I'm a responsible adult. But every so often, I'll be a bit silly.
0, but sometimes I stay up all night in my pajamas eating ice cream and watching TV.
It's perfectly responsible.
What would be an example of being irresponsible?
Because
it seems so vast.
Not paying your bills, leaving the child out in the middle of the highway.
Yeah, it's like...
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go for 0. All the things that I consider important, I make sure I do. But
For me,
maybe it
sometimes
should be
it's a
a
bit
1.
like impulsive spending instead of saving, stuff like that.
Oh yeah, so like if
For
I
me.
know I don't have the money, I won't. I'm not impulsive at all. So
Oh no,
yeah.
like I won't do it if I haven't got the money. Like I don't get into debt or stuff. But like if I've got a bit of spare cash, but if I got like a bit of spare cash, I'm like I could save this and like put it towards I don't know, saving for a mortgage or something, or I could buy this new pair of shoes. I'm a little bit more irresponsible
There's always the occasional impulsive purchase, but like you're not maxing out your credit cards in order to go and spend a vacation in Bali.
That's true. It's true. Yeah. All right, the next one is, do you have a history of juvenile delinquency? So think back to when you were a teenager.
Right.
I was fine.
I mean, isn't everyone a 2?
Yeah, like...
I was never in trouble.
That's a hard one.
Oh, I used to get in so much trouble because I just wanted to experience and do everything.
Yeah.
I didn't do drugs. Like I didn't do like the typical stuff, but I would do random things. Like I would just, kind of like stuff like graffiti or something that is just kind of like,
I
didn't. That's a bad example because I didn't really do graffiti, but like I, just kind of.
It expresses like it expresses that grey area. I was stuck in an environment where my only choices were to be with people that were very bad with what they were doing, or just become recluse and play World of Warcraft. And I did the latter. So I had like 3 years of my teenage years where I just didn't go out. I was just playing Warcraft and hanging out with people which weren't delinquent. So I would put 0 for me.
I'm gonna go for 0 because like when I was in school and stuff, I didn't really have like any friends to get into trouble with. But then when I got to sixth form, I did have friends, which was nice. And we did do things that were like technically illegal. Like at 16, we would get into clubs and drink and go to pubs and stuff. Because no one in Barnsley ever checked ID. So even having a baby face, I just got served. So technically, going to clubs from 16 was illegal, but I had my parents, like, they always knew where I was and they were fine with it. And, they would, like, stay up until I got home to make sure I got in safe and things like that. So I was never, like, going against their wishes or anything. So
I guess I'd go 1. I wasn't drug dealing and bashing cars in and mugging people, but, I did kind of the typical child delinquency stuff.
Okay, the next one is slightly similar but different, and it's early behavioral problems. So this is like before puberty. Like, did you have problems in like lower school and stuff like that? Were you always getting into trouble? Again, I was like a perfect student for a long time. So I'm going 0.
I'm severely dyslexic, but it wasn't diagnosed until I'd left school because they're useless. So I was always in trouble. I wasn't paying attention, etc., etc. But I was just struggling. Yeah. So where would I fit on that?
I'd say maybe a 1.
Yeah, go for it. 1.
Yeah. The next one I don't think is relevant to any of us, but it's... I don't know how to pronounce this. Revocation of conditional release. So it's like, if you've been in prison and you've been released and then you have it taken away from you. I think we're all a 0 on that one. I hope. Yeah. 18 is promiscuous sexual behavior.
Do I have to admit to this one?
No, we can skip it for you, sir.
People will just add up my tally anyways.
Yeah, that's true.
So, like depending on how you define it, like I've never, like, I've had, relationships and stuff. I've never cheated. Like I've never cheated on anyone in a relationship, married or not. Like if I'm dating someone, like I don't cheat. I don't do that. But I've definitely had, flings and stuff that, stuff happens. So I guess 2, would that be depending on the society standards, like 1 or 2?
I think so. It's a society thing, isn't it? It's like some people would say that being promiscuous is bad, and some people would say, well, why is it bad? Like, if you're being protective, who gives a shit? Like, it's like people enjoying themselves.
I always make sure it's like it's consensual. It's with a consenting adult, and You know, it's you know, as long as you're not lying and you're being upfront and honest and stuff, like, yeah, you know.
Yeah, I think the best way I could put it for me is that sex is awesome. As Christopher Hitchens used to say, it's great, but it has diminishing returns. But I'm not particularly promiscuous, so I'll just put 1.
Yeah, I'm going for a 1 because, like, you know, compared to Girl Defined, for example, I'm a disgusting harlot. But, you know, I'm in a very happy long-term relationship, and I'm not exactly going to go ruining that. So, I mean, I don't.
I'd still put myself as 2 because, like, I don't see a problem.
No,
I don't see a problem with people having a friends with benefits or a one night stand type thing.
No, same.
And so it's like, you know, you do you, have fun, like, enjoy life, but at the same time, like, do it in a healthy fashion. Just like you can have healthy eating versus anorexia or, you know, massive like gluttony or something. Like, find the middle ground and you know, be safe.
Yeah.
So.
All right, quickly the last 2. 19 is you have many short-term but serious relationships. So think about like serial monogamy, like you jump from one to another.
No.
Short-term serious?
Yeah. So like I used to have a friend in 6th form who like basically dated every single one of my female friends, and he would only go like a week being single, and then he'd be on to the next girl.
Yeah.
I know loads of people like that. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, plenty.
Yeah. That's like the opposite of me.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some long-term relationships, and then I've had periods of time where like I didn't want to date anyone, but I had like some casual relationships, but they weren't serious. Like I wasn't in any way emotionally invested in them.
I think as long as you're not like proposing to someone after like 2 months and then doing it repeatedly throughout the year, you're safe.
Okay. I guess 0.
Yeah, I think the last one is going to be a 0 for all of us as well. It's criminal versatility. So have you committed lots of different types of crime?
Well,
have I committed, or do I know how to commit? Because like,
have you committed?
Okay, then I
For
go
example,
with a 0.
have you been arrested for burglary and murder and drug dealing?
Oh,
as an example.
No, but I know how to get away with all of them.
Too much Dexter.
Like, it's. I mean, I'm probably on a list somewhere for owning the Anarchist Cookbook.
Oh,
but,
it's fine. Dan has that as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, do we add them up?
Tot up your score. I have got 9 out of 40.
9?
I might have missed one, but I think I got 11.
Ooh.
Cool.
Such a psychopath.
Yeah.
Steve?
I've got 8.
8? So you are the most normal out of all of us.
But that's according to my own testimony. So I strongly suspect of somebody else
that
knew what they were doing.
The most normal, but if someone is like a 0 on everything, wouldn't that be like the opposite extreme end of the spectrum? Like they're just so emotional about everything.
Yeah, they'd
like,
be an anxious mess. Just absolute mess. Yeah.
So me.
Yeah, but you got 9. What's happening?
You scored between the two of us.
Damn it. That's true. So like a big problem with this test is that, you know, it can be so subjective, but also psychopaths are amazing at mimicking the way that they think they're supposed to act. So they could very easily like trick whoever's reviewing them into, you know, thinking they weren't a psychopath.
Yeah.
It's very hard to tell often if someone's faking an emotion or not.
On that topic, have you ever heard of a man called Richard Klukinski?
I have not.
He was known as the Iceman, and he's an American convict. He's dead now.
Oh, I have heard of him. Sorry, yeah, go on.
Yeah. So he got convicted for 6 murders, but he was a contract killer, and he killed over 200, according to him. And I've watched all the interviews with him. He fascinates me. And at first, you think this is absolute nonsense. Like, he is just gloating, and it's not true. I'm personally convinced that he probably did kill near that number. He's very, very, very intelligent, or was, I should say. You can tell by the way he speaks. There's just not a mistake in the words he's using. Very, very calm and collective. Stoic as fuck. But what's amazing is how he speaks about certain subjects, and how there is no, and how he's very honest about how he has no feelings whatsoever for things that would
Just the
absolutely
emotional
rip us
detachment.
apart. And you can tell he has no feelings because of the way he's expressed it. It almost can't be faked to do it to that point. But he scored very, very high on that test. And there's
I'm not surprised, actually.
There's a therapist that's talking to him, and he asks the therapist, "What do you make of my life? Can you help me figure out what's wrong with me?" And he was saying that they know that there's a genetic component, and they know that there's a cultural. And they were saying that you obviously are born without empathy, because there's no way that you can experience some of the things you've seen. Like, he tied people down and saw them eaten alive by rats and watched while eating a sandwich. Like, nothing. There was no emotional effect in him. But also, he had an incredibly nasty upbringing. So I find myself as an observer seeing him, and I mean very, very bad. I find myself as an observer looking at him and, one, thinking, what an evil person. But also, I can't help but feel very bad for him.
Yeah, because it's not his fault, but
it's like,
yeah, it's tough.
It's hard. It's like he will always be responsible for what he did, but he didn't choose to be born and not have any sense of empathy. That would be horrible. Like, absolutely, he didn't choose to be born into a family which absolutely abused and destroyed his life from the outset. It's like it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point.
Yeah. This does lead me on to like the next bit that I want to talk about if we've got time, and that's kind of like what a psychopath's brain looks like. So one of the big things is that they have reduced volumes of grey matter in the brain's paralimbic system, which is responsible for emotional regulation, self-control, goal setting, and staying motivated in the face of delayed gratification. But the bigger thing, I think, is that often their mirror neurons don't work. So do you guys know what mirror neurons are?
No.
Yeah, they allow us to empathize.
Yeah.
To kind of feel and experience what other people are feeling.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so basically, to give you like an official definition, a mirror neuron is a neuron that fires both when an animal acts and when the animal observes the same action performed by another. So, for example, when we smile, a neuron might fire, but also when we see someone else smile, the same neuron fires. So it allows us to empathize with others and understand others. It's a really, really important part of feeling empathy and understanding other people's motivations. And if they don't work, you don't really understand empathy. You don't really understand other people.
Could you say that psychopaths won't yawn when you yawn? It's not firing for them.
Yes, that is a big theory that people have, yeah.
Yawn contagion doesn't work for psychopaths.
Yeah.
I'd love to see that study.
I imagine a lot of people just listening have started yawning.
I've also heard that like there's been a correlation between the size of the amygdala, like if you have a decreased amygdala size, which like that's the part of your brain that's responsible for a lot of like emotions and feelings, and correlations between that and a higher level of psychopathy, and the connections between the amygdala and the rest of the brain. If there's like decreased activity, then there's correlations between that and psychopathic tendencies. So it very much does have like neurological basis for sure.
A couple of interesting little studies that have been done on people who've been diagnosed as psychopaths found that they're often unable to detect fear in other people's faces, and they have a really high tolerance for seeing images of things that would otherwise disgust other people. So we're talking like blood and gore and that sort of stuff. It just doesn't elicit an emotional response in them. Which is quite interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah. So to move on very quickly to this last section, I'm just going to give you a couple of little stats. So these aren't taken from the biggest sample sizes, so there could be a little bit of wiggle room. They're not completely 100% infallible. But they reckon that the US population has 1.2% of people are psychopaths, and in the UK it's 0.6% of people. But again, this could come back to the different ways of diagnosing and the different standards and so on. So it could just be that, you know, it's the same in both, but it's a little bit kind of harder to be diagnosed as a psychopath over here, so it's lower. That said, in prisons, it's found that in the UK, 7.7% of inmates are likely to be psychopaths. Couldn't find any stats for the US, but interestingly, I found the stats for Iran, where 23% of inmates are thought to be psychopaths, which I thought was quite interesting.
So it's in both cases, it's much higher than the general population.
Yes. But that's not to say all psychopaths are criminals. It's just that amongst criminals, a higher percentage of psychopaths. So
yeah, well, there's a book called The Psychopath Test by John Ronson.
Yes, I literally have it here. I love this book.
Oh, awesome.
Sorry,
like,
go on.
he kind of he delves into the world of like the he calls it like the madness industry, but he also he's convinced that like people who are like high functioning CEOs, there's like a higher level of psychopaths there. But I actually have to go. This room I only booked
of course,
until right now. So
that's okay. The last bit I was going to talk about was just going to be about like psychopaths having jobs and like the top 10 jobs for psychopaths. Do you reckon we've got like 3-4 minutes to do that, or do you need time to pack up?
I can't, but we could we list them on our website?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
We'll put a link in the description and we'll have a list of them.
Tell you what, we'll list them on the website. If you guys are watching on YouTube, have a guess what like are the top 10 jobs for psychopaths down in the comments. So this is like, so this is basically like out of everyone in that industry, how many of them are psychopaths? Like what percentage? I'll give you a clue. The number 1 is CEO, as we said. Different studies say different things, but between 4 and 21% of CEOs are thought to be psychopaths, which is quite interesting. The others on the list can be quite surprising. There's someone there that I did not expect. Nice. Number 3 could fit us guys.
Ooh, we'll leave it as a mystery because I really have to go.
No worries.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much us done for today. We're
sorry
we're
for
not
rushing at the end.
Don't worry about it. It's all good. Our fault for starting a little bit late. Mostly my fault. I was grappling a bit. But thank you, guys.
This has been an absolute blast, and now we want you to join in the conversation over on the Here and How Facebook and Twitter pages, or follow us on Pinterest and Instagram if you just want some of the dankest of sciencey memes. If you like one of our particular styles, check out each of our YouTube channels: Rachel Oates, Rationality Rules by Stephen Woodford, and Holy Kool-Aid by me, Thomas Westbrook. To find all of our episodes, show notes, contact information, and more, warp on over to our home base, thehereandhow.com. If you enjoyed this episode and want us to succeed in spreading the love of science, you can help us out by giving us a 5-star review on iTunes or Stitcher. And to all our friends and family listening, thank you for spending this episode with us. We'll be back to explore another exciting big idea next week. Now go create something magnificent.